Wilson Show. With Flip's guest, James Brown. The Muppets, Big Bird and Oscar, courtesy of Sesame Street. Sunday's Child. And special guest star, David Frost. And now, here's Flip.
Welcome to the show. And I want to say that since this is the first program, for quite a while now, everyone's been stopping me and asking me, what's the Flip Wilson Show going to be like? And I've been getting calls at my house all hours of the night saying, what's the Flip Wilson Show going to be like? Yesterday, a guy ran into the side of my car at an intersection. And I got out and I walked over to him and he said, I stopped you because I wanted to ask you what the Flip Wilson Show is going to be like. You know? So I've been trying to get it together in a word that I could be as explicit about it as possible, and I decided the best way to put it would be to say, watch out. That's all, watch out. We're going to have a lot of fun, hopefully, and so far we've been having a ball. We think you're going to dig it. Now, since this is the first program, everyone figured we should open with a big production number. You know, something really fancy. A lot of great scenery, beautiful costumes, you know, dancing girls, the works. And we gave it serious thought. But when we got into the meetings on the planning of it, we found out that the opening number that we had planned, for this number, it would cost $104,000. I said, gentlemen, this is ridiculous. This show is going to start off in the hole if you do it like that. I said, everybody's seen those fancy production numbers on the other shows. But how many people have ever seen $104,000? So I decided that we'd open this show by showing you what $104,000 looks like. May I have the envelope, please? What you doing with your hand on the gun? You know, people can't relax and enjoy looking at the money and you standing there with your hand on the gun. No, what? I bet if I tripped you and ran, you couldn't catch me. Yeah, well, this is it, ladies and gentlemen. $104,000. 500 is actual cash. Now, wasn't that much better than watching a bunch of girls jumping all around on the stage? There you go there, brother. You're going to take that back to the bank, right? Don't go home with that money. If the bank's closed when you get there, slip it under my dressing room door. I'll watch it for you. You know, James Brown used to be a fighter. And James is on the show, and we've been discussing fighting during the rehearsal the last few days. And when we were on the subject, the conversation came up. I was telling James about this buddy of mine who took fighting private lessons from Muhammad Ali. Well, let me tell you the way it happened. Muhammad had invited a guy by his house for dinner Sunday evening. So the guy goes by, they had dinner, and they're sitting around after dinner, and the fellow says, Muhammad, he says, since you're not fighting anymore right now, would you mind giving me a few private lessons? So Muhammad said, no, I don't mind. Fellow said, well, how much would you charge me for 10 easy lessons? Muhammad said, well, 10 lessons, $15 a lesson, $150. Fellow said, great. Took out the money, paid Muhammad right then. Sat. Muhammad said, look, you come by tomorrow morning, which would have been Monday morning, and I'll give you your first lesson. 9 o'clock the next morning, the guy shows up at Muhammad's house. They go out in the backyard. Muhammad says, now you got to listen to these instructions. If you want to learn about fighting, you got to listen very close. So the first thing I want to tell you is, when you're fighting, watch out for the other man's left. You understand that? He said, watch out for the left. Now, he knows you're going to be watching, so you got to watch harder than him. But whatever you do, don't stop watching out. Watch out. Said, you understand that? Fella said, yes, I understand. Muhammad said, now look, don't tell me you understand if you don't. I said, I understand, I'm watching. Muhammad said, bam! Hit the fella right in the eye. In the left eye. So now, see that? I told you to watch out. Said you said you were watching and you weren't. The guy's eyes popped up. Muhammad said, now here, the second thing I gotta tell you is, once your eye is closed, your opponent knows that you can't see from that side. So he's gonna be moving to your left. So now you have to watch that side. Said, you understand? I said, yes. Said, I'm watching. Muhammad said, are you watching the left side? I said, yes, I'm watching. Bam! Hit him in the right eye. So now you can't spend all your time watching one side. No, you gotta watch both sides, because your opponent is watching you watch. Fellow said, Muhammad, he said, how's my footwork? Muhammad went, smash! Hit him in the mouth. So now another thing I gotta tell you is don't talk to a man when you're fighting. Said, you're in the ring to fight. Don't get in there and start trying to socialize with the man. Said, if you got any talking you want to do, like predicting anything, you got to do that before you get in the ring. Get in the ring and start no conversation. So, bam, bam, left hooks, right crosses, jabs, uppercuts. After 30 minutes, Muhammad says, look, I'm tired. So that's enough for today. So I said, okay, Muhammad. Eyes are closed, couple teeth missing, head is 3 sizes larger. I said, okay, Muhammad. I said, when do I get my next lesson? Muhammad said, look, I'll give you next lesson. You show up here Wednesday at 12 o'clock and I'll fix you up. Wednesday at 12 o'clock, the guy doesn't show. Now, Muhammad's a gentleman, you know? He doesn't drink, smoke, run around with reckless women, none of that. And Muhammad gave the guy his word. He was going to give him the lessons, and the guy didn't show up, so Muhammad didn't want the fella to think he was cheating him, so Muhammad went to his house. It would have been the same thing if the fella had been a mountain. So Muhammad goes to the fella's house, you know, and the guy's laying there, you know, and Muhammad says, how come you didn't show up for your lessons? The fella said, Muhammad said, I've been intending to talk to you about that. Said, when I first came to you and brought up the subject of these lessons, said it wasn't my intention to fight as a professional. Said, I never had that much in mind. I didn't want to learn all that about it. Said, it's my neighbor. Said, I don't like my neighbor. Said, I just wanted to learn enough from you to mess him up real bad. Muhammad said, then you don't want the money back. Fellow said, no. Said, it isn't that. He said, I don't want the money back. Said, I want you to keep the money. Said, but I figured the best way to do this would be to send my neighbor over to your house to take the rest of my lessons.